Ladies and gentlemen, chess is divided up into three sections of the game. I've got playlists on all of them, but chess is divided into openings, middle games, and end games. Now you can be completely winning in the opening or in the middle game, but often you have to transition the game to an end game, and that can be the trickiest part of the game to play. And today I'm going to tell you how to win king and pawn endgames or to draw them. This is going to be a comprehensive summary. There will be time codes in the description, but we will cover at least 5 main concepts, and if not more, there will be lots of information in this video. Watch it as many times as you need to make sure you get everything. This should be your one-stop guide for king and pawn endgames. And with that said, let's get over to the board. I hope you like the new overlay. If you don't, tell me in the comments. But we're looking at king and pawn endgames. Now this, you can see there's queens on the board, but we're going to get a trade here. What is a king and pawn endgame? Well, it's when there's kings and there's pawns. So this is a basic example of a king and pawn endgame, just kings and a bunch of pawns. Now, how do we go about and play this game? Well, let's look at this example. We're looking at the black pieces. And you can see that the main idea is to bring your kings as close to the center as possible. But then pawn play is very important, knowing when to break with pawns and stuff like that. We will look at much simpler examples than this, but we're looking at this for now. Now here, black pushes the pawn and gives a check. And you'll find in the endgame, there are lots of moves that draw, and there are lots of moves that lose and win. So you've got to find them and be very precise. The endgame is very precise. So you see here, that trade, and now we look at the evaluation. Is it still zeros? Is it still zeros as the engine thinks? It is still zeros. So we bring the black king up, and now we push the pawn. And now the black king comes up. And the king comes forward, and now we push the black pawn. What has white done wrong here? Well, a theme that will come here. White's got their king stuck on the edge of the board. This is still a draw because white's pawn play is here. They've got a 4 on the 3 on the queen side, so they might be able to use it to break through. But this black pawn does very well at stopping this coming forward. So basically, you've got a 2 on nothing here. A 2 on 2, not a 2 on nothing. And then you've got the 2 on 1 here. So black is actually doing very well. So white's going to be very precise. So we push a pawn. Very important. Black responds with b5, and white locks down the queen side with a5. And you can see the engine still thinks this is a draw. But now there are only 2 moves that are holding. And that is, there's only 2 moves that hold for black here, and that's king g3 or king f3. If you play king e3, or here, then you lose the game. So black finds the correct move, king f3, and takes, and now the white king is not in the proper position to chase down the pawn, and we see the pawn run up the board as the kings run to the queen side to try and gather all these pawns. And this is completely winning. Black sacks the queen, and we get here, and black will promote another queen. And here white resigned. The main purpose of a king and pawn endgame is to get one of your pawns through to promote to a queen or to a rook if you're being, bad manners. But yeah, it's to promote one of your pawns. All the other pieces that you can normally use to checkmate are off the board. You're using your pawns to either somehow checkmate the king, if you can manage that, or to just promote them to a queen and use the queen to checkmate. And that's kind of principle 1 there, basic king and pawn endgame. That's what we showed you. But we'll be now talking about kind of both basic king plus pawn versus king and the opposition. They are tied together. So I will set that up, and there will be a slight edit, and we'll resume very shortly. Now here we are, we have a basic king versus king and pawn endgame. Now here, we're learning about opposition. What is opposition? It is when the kings face each other like this, 1 square apart between them. Like they're on opposite sides of the line, they're facing off. Now this is a very key principle, because it's always an odd number of squares. So you can get distant opposition if I move the kings, like here, and then here. You can see the evaluation does depend on the distance, and we've got an odd number of squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. That's still opposition, and this is an important principle. Let me move the pieces back to where they were. Now, I'm going to give you a couple seconds. Who do you think is winning in this position, and why? And what is the question you must ask if you see this position on the board? It depends on whose move it is. Currently, the board is set for white to move. So if white is to play here, the game is a draw. Because what is the general plan? Wherever white goes, black will go in the same direction. So if white goes here, black will go here. And very careful, if white tries to be sneaky and go back one square, black can come here. Very important, all there. As long as you don't go there, you're fine. And black will just do whatever white does, and they will go. So if we play this position out, say king e5, king e4, trying to be sneaky, then we've got, you can actually play king d6. And if d5, then you've got king e7. And you might say, oh, but 2 squares, now I can make opposition with the king e5. No, because the pawn, now I can play king d7, and you can't get there. So king f4, or king e4. Now you can play king e7, doesn't really matter. And that's 2 squares to red, so I'm going to go here. And now king d6, and you can't get through. Even if you push the pawn, as long as black doesn't make a detrimental mistake like wandering too far, you will never get the pawn through. So now let's look at a new analysis. Let's set up the board again. Set up position. And now we're going to set it up, but we're going to set it up with one key difference. It's black to move. And if it is black to move, then the game is winning for the man with the white pieces. You can see the evaluation jump up. And we load this position in because wherever black goes, let's say they play king c7, white goes forward in the opposite direction. And even though black can go here, white gets the opposition again. And you go here, and now I go here. And even if you go here, now I push the pawn. The pawn has got a red carpet all the way up the board. And white will promote the pawn, and they will win. And that is the key of opposition. And you know, I've shown it to you before, you can have it far apart, but remember you've got to have an odd number of squares. Otherwise, the opponent will just creep 1 square forward, and they will get the opposition. So that's very important. It's a very basic rule. Now, there is one more thing you need to know about the basic king and pawn endgame. So if we set the position up again, and this is where opposition doesn't always work. If we set up position, and we go here, and we set up the same position, alright, this is the same position, but on the edge of the board. That's a very key difference. Even if we set it to black to move, and we load the position, you can see the eval bar, it's a draw. Why? Because what made the previous position so successful, you could outflank the opponent. Like, if the kings were here, black went that way, you could go that way. You could outflank them. You can't outflank them. The black king can't go off the board. So even if they go here, you can't go the opposite way. So you go here, and they go here. And you're going to lose the pawn. You can't get the pawn through. Even if for some reason you bribed your opponent, and they went all the way into the corner, right? You went here. You can't get them out. I can push the pawn. Nope. As long as they don't leave these back 2 squares, you can't do anything, and the game ends in a draw. Now, we need to move on to the next principle. So we'll have another quick edit. Hopefully the video doesn't break. Alright, now we need to talk about point C, the rule of the square. Now you're looking at the position on the board. You can see a white pawn and a black king. So you know if the black king can get to the end of the board, it is a draw. Now, we need to know, are they in time? Well, let's have a look. And here we need to draw out what is called the square. So, you take the pawn, right? And you draw this big diagonal line to the back rank, wherever it's going. So if it's the black pawn, it's going this way. The white pawn's going up the board. And then we complete this square, right? So this is the square we're looking at. If black can step into the square, so let's maybe draw the square with like some other color. Yeah, this red square, right? If black can get into the square before white moves, black will draw the game. So if it is black to move, black will play one of these 2 moves and will get inside the square. However, if it is white to move, then they will go up a square, and we will have a new square that is like this, and black cannot teleport into it. They can't. Let's maybe use some different colors. They can't get into the square. So if it is black to move, black draws the game. If it is white to move, white draws the game. All because we have to know about the square. This is the square. A reminder, you just draw that long diagonal line. So in this case, it's from the h4 square to the d8 square. You draw that diagonal and you complete the little square. Black can step into it, it's a draw. If black can't, the pawn will promote without being stopped. This is obviously much easier if you can get your king over there to just stop the king advancing. You can follow him and then promote the pawn. But the king over here is for some reason on a1. And this is a position that could have happened. Maybe black, sacrifice the rook or something to stop this pawn or whatnot. And now the black king is going to go try and stop this pawn. And that is the principle of the square. And it is a very important principle in endgames. And you need to know about in calculation. And you don't have to calculate move for move. Like, you don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, you don't have to spend time thinking about that and visualizing that. All you do is boom, 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 boom. White to play. So if white goes there, new square, right? New square. Let me just... The new square looks like this. Because white went up a point. No, doesn't look like that. It's this big. I knew something was off. I was like, the black king shouldn't be able to get into it. Can black get into it? No. Win. That's all you have to calculate. It's going to save you so much time. It's a principle that you can learn in literally 30 seconds. The length of a YouTube short. And it is very simple. Can win you many, many games and help your endgame calculation techniques. I hope this was helpful. Let's move on to point D. Right, now we need to talk about the shouldering or shoulder charging principle. And this is a very important principle in chess. And you see, we've got the exact same endgame. It is a flank pawn, and it is the black king. Now, this can happen on any parts of the board, but I wanted to just use this again. Now, very important here. What do we know looking at the square, right? If we just use the pawn, the black king will get there in time, because we push the pawn, and then we build our little square. It'll be that big, right? But the black king will be able to step into it. Well, not there. But the black king will be able to get into it. So if we try to push the pawn, just the pawn, it's a draw. And black will get there in time. We will try and queen, and the game will end in a king versus king draw. So instead of a6, white must play king b6. And you are using your king to be like a blocker. Like, I think in American football, I'm not sure. Like, you're just not letting them get to your pawn. Your pawn is gold right now. It needs to get through. So you just use your king as a big, nice wall, big, tough guy. For once in his life, the king is going to be a big, tough guy. And he's going to block the other king from getting to the pawn. And then you'll be able to promote the pawn, because the black king will have to try and go around. And now you can push the pawn because the king won't get there in time. You have to go somewhere like there. And now you can queen. And hopefully from here, you will be able to checkmate with queen versus king. And that is the basic principle of shouldering. You use your king to stop the black king getting closer. You know, even if it's like a middle pawn, like an f pawn, and the black king is coming from this way, right? Coming this way. You can use your king along this line to stop him getting in the square, and you will successfully promote your pawn. And that is the basic principle of shouldering or shoulder charging technique or whatever. Now we're going to talk about tempo moves and triangulation and zugzwang. Very important pawn endgame techniques. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it to this, the final section, E, tempo moves. This is basically going to be titled How to Lose a Move, but Win the Game. And it is a very subtle principle of combining zugzwang, which means the compulsion to move, meaning if you move, you make your position worse. Triangulation, where your opponent only has 2 squares they can go to, but you have 3. So you can repeat the position, but get it on your opponent's move or flip the move. And that is very important. Remember the principle we spoke about earlier of opposition and how important it is. Now, if you get the opposition, then your opponent can, do its thing and make a draw. But if for some reason you had another move and you could get the position again, but with your opponent's turn, then you win the game and you can get it there. And that's what we're really talking about here. So we're greeted with this position. We've got these 2 pawns. What do? They disallow access to these 2 squares. So these 2 squares are null and void. It is white to play in this position. And there is only one move for them to win. So they are already on a narrow path. But you have to identify this position, and hopefully this will be helpful. Watch this as many times as you need to. It's king d5, right? And now, Black only has, really, to try and keep the game drawn, king to c8. That is the only move that kind of holds for black. Now, if you played king d8, you would lose after king d6, king c8, c7, king b7, and you would push the black king out. And then king d7 wins, and the black king would go here, and you could make a queen. I don't know. Could you make a queen? Hang on. Can you make a queen here? No, you draw. You lose the game. So you probably have to play king c6. Oh yeah, and then you force mate. Okay, so that's what you have to do. So be careful. Endgames are so tricky. You might auto queen, and then it's a problem. So you've got to be careful right till the last. And king d8 in that previous position, just going back here, right? So we had king d5. And now if king d8, there's king d6, king c8, trying to get that position, but now c7, king b7, and king d7 wins again. So black just runs out of squares to go to that are safe. So after king c8, which is the best move, we get king c4, which looks silly, but now you get king d8 again. If king c7, then king c5 wins because you get the opposition, and this is what we want. We want this opposition because now whichever way black goes, we can go in the opposite way. So, this is what we want. This is the position where we want it. So you see white wasted a time. They played king d5, king c4, and then king c5. That is the idea. Black, in theory, only has these two squares to go to. So we're going to just run around in a circle until we get the opposition that we want. And that is the key idea. So king c4, the best move. Now king d8. And then if king c7, we got the position we want. Now king d4. And now look at this. Opposition. You got it. 3 squares away, long distance opposition. And now king c8. And now we get king d5, king c7, and we get the opposition again. Lovely stuff. And this will allow you to push the pawn through and win the game. In fact, white ends up winning the pawn on a6. But you could still, maybe not quite push the pawn, because if you push the pawn, they would go here, and then you would get the opposition and make a draw. But you can win this pawn, and black won't be able to stop you. And that is how you've got to use it. Let's go back all the way through it again. From this position, the main idea, black only really, in theory, has 2 squares to go to. So white will use this little geometric trick of using the 3 squares, 4 squares, and create a opposition that's beneficial to them. But they start, and this is how you use it. So king c8, the best move. King c4, and you see black plays the best move the whole time, but white has it all the time, and they've got to find this little geometric trick of getting in, getting the opposition, and winning the pawn, and winning the game. I hope this was beneficial to you. I hope you'll be able to use this to win your games, or if you're maybe losing your games, you can use the idea of, the square, opposition, to try and draw and hold on to these games. Not all king and pawn endgames are winning when your opponent is up a pawn. We've already seen, if they're on the flank, you can draw them. If they're in the middle of the board, if you can get opposition at just the right time, and your opponent doesn't have this geometric trick, or if they don't find it, you can draw the game. And these will save you so many games from lost positions. These will win you games from drawn positions. King and pawn endgames, the most important and fundamental endgame you will learn. I hope this video was instructive. I hope it was beneficial. Otherwise, I will see you next time.